आदाब अदब और तहजीब के इस सफ़र में आप सबका फिर से खैर मकदम है। I, Nagma Gulzar, welcome you all in this special episode where we will dive into the enchanting world of Kahlil Gibran on his birth anniversary. Kahlil Gibran was a Lebanese-American poet, an artist, a philosopher. His timeless works, especially The Prophet, have touched millions of hearts around the globe with their profound insights on love, life, and spirituality. This episode is really special to me as I am joined by my little daughter Zara and my husband Gulzar Wani. Further, we will be joined by Reverend Matthew Jacob, a civil servant, avid reader, and a fan of Kahlil Gibran. Also, we will be joined by Rahul Nigam, IIM educated, corporate strategist turned author, poet, and philosopher. He is an author of an acclaimed book, Such is Life. To start our session, I would like to ask Gulzar Saab to tell us about the life and background of Kahlil Gibran.
Thank you, Nagma. I am really honored and it's a great feeling to be here with you. And speaking about Kahlil Gibran, it is itself a feeling which takes me to my academic days when I was first introduced to Kahlil Gibran. Then that poet, he fascinated me, and I continued to read him starting with The Prophet and then other books of Kahlil Gibran, which are not that famous but equally good. Kahlil Gibran was born on 6th January 1983 in a beautiful valley in Lebanon, in a Christian family. And his childhood was not that great because his father, he was put behind bars. And his mother was the person who basically raised him up, and he showed his greatness
in reading and writing.
Yes, from the beginning. And this was identified from by the mother and the teachers in the school in Lebanon. Gibran, with his family, that included his sisters and a half brother and the mother, they shifted to Boston in USA, where many refugees and immigrants from Middle East, they were going there and settling there. And Kahlil Gibran, when he went to USA, he was introduced to English language, and he basically again showed the intellect which he was already showing when he was back in Lebanon. And living in Boston, they struggled a lot initially, and then he developed as a young author. It is said that Kahlil Gibran lost his artworks in a fire when he was just 18. And this was a very turning point in his life, and he then started writing vigorously, because this particular incident when he lost his paintings and other artistic works, it was an impact in his mind, and he started writing vigorously and several books. So initially he was writing in Arabic, some of his work, which is now translated into English. So it was actually in the Arabic language, and later on he shifted to English language, which we are talking about, The Prophet. It was his third book, which was published in 1923. So this was the book, though it was not initially taken well, or it was not that famous, but later on this book has become one of the most top-selling books around the world, most translated books around the world. And it is said that after Shakespeare and Lao Tzu, it is Kahlil Gibran's work, third most influential writer or the poet in the world. So this is brief about Kahlil Gibran, and I'll add one more thing, that we know Kahlil Gibran as a writer or a poet, but he was an equally good artist. Once he was told by somebody that if you have to choose between your work as an artist and your work as a writer, which one will you choose? So he smiled and he said that it's very difficult, because as a parent, if you are asked to choose between your two children, so it is very difficult to choose which one is the favorite one. So that was his caliber, that equally good writer and equally good
as an artist. Now it's time to hear from Zara, like what she has to say about this beautiful book, The Prophet.
Yes, Mama, we recently watched this movie, The Prophet. I was excited about the central character, Almitra. She had lost her voice and Mustafa helped her to find her voice back. The movie is full of colorful animations, music and messages that inspires us to see the good in everything around us. Now, let me recite a poem of Kahlil Gibran called Children, which talks about how children are full of dreams and belong to the future. Your children are not your children. They are the sons and daughters of life's longing for itself. They come through you, but not from you. Though they are with you, they belong not to you. You may give them your love, but not your thoughts, for they have their own thoughts. You may house their bodies, but not their souls, for as their souls dwell in a house of tomorrow, which you cannot visit, not even in your dreams. You may strive to be like them, but seek not to make them like you, for life goes not backwards, nor tarries with yesterday. You are the bows from which your children, as living arrows, are sent forth. The archer sees the mark upon the path of the infinite, and he bends you with his might, that his arrow may go swift and far. Let your bending in the archer's hand be for gladness, for even as he loves the arrow that flies, he also loves the bow that is stable. Thank you.
Thank you so much, Zara. Indeed, the kids are full of dreams and they belong to the future. Here I would like to ask Ruben that how were you introduced to Kahlil Gibran and how has his writings influenced you? Further, I would also like to ask that which works of Kahlil Gibran do you find most interesting and relevant?
Thank you, Gulzar and Nagma, for giving me this opportunity to speak to your esteemed audience. Speaking of Gibran, I did not discover Gibran. Gibran comes to me whenever I'm stuck in my life. Cold, damp, wet. That's Delhi for you now. So when you are in a culture that is alien to you, a climate you are not used to, a hint of melancholy comes into you when you are doing your first year-ending work, you need Gibran to come out and tell you that you are far from the scenes of your childhood and even farther from your own heart. Gibran was a migrant who migrated to US when he was 12. So the place that he lived out his life was different from the place that he lived his childhood in. So that pining for your childhood, for what you were, is very evident in Gibran's writing. And Gulzar, here I would not want to give you one work of Gibran, be it the Prophet, be it the Frontrunner. They all contain the spirit of Gibran, the friend, philosopher, guide that I can always go back to. As a public servant, there is this quote that has touched me a lot. You give but little when you give of your possessions. It is when you give of yourself that you truly give. Because at times you may work your hardest, but then your work may not be rewarded, recognized, accepted, often rejected. You are ridiculed, mocked. But then Gibran is there to help me out. My larger life philosophy revolves around the present. Past is gone. Future. You don't know what is the future. It is now. So Gibran helps me here also to stay in the now. Your daily life is your temple and your religion. Whenever you enter into it, take with you your all. So, Gibran is not an individual, he is an institution. You can go to him, especially when I am entering my 40s and largely becoming lonely in life because we have our families, we have our works, we have our travels, we have our work, so you are not able to get those quality conversations in with the people you would like to. But if you read Gibran, that is sorted. So, as I said, Gibran is somebody that everybody in this present world should read on, because Gibran went to America when America was on the threshold of a change, threshold of previously unseen wealth and material possessions, which the Industrial Revolution brought in. So, when the entire country was running after possessions, you have this exotic Lebanese writer coming in and answering so many questions that you usually don't get answers to. So, yes, once again, congrats to Nagma and Gulzar for remembering Gibran on his birthday, and a happy Gibran Day to all the viewers. Thank you.
Thank you, Ruben, for your valuable insights on Kahlil Gibran. That Gibran comes whenever you are stuck in your life. Further, you have beautifully explained how Gibran helps you in your life's philosophy to stay in present. There is no doubt that everybody should read Gibran. Here I would like to ask Rahul to share his thoughts about Kahlil Gibran and how has Kahlil Gibran influenced him in his writings.
I think it is very important for a writer to read a lot, and more so as for a poet. Not just the quantity, but a large diversity of books is very important, so that one comes to appreciate different styles of writing, and in due course of time develop their own way or style of writing. Talking of my journey as a poet, I think 3 poets have influenced my writing the most, and Kahlil Gibran is clearly the first among them. The other 2 being Mirza Ghalib and Gulzar. It is interesting to note that all these poets that I am talking of come from different social backgrounds and are poets from different eras and different point in time. Talking specifically of Kahlil Gibran, I think more than a poet, I consider him a great philosopher of his own time, and that stood out for me. In my view, his book, The Prophet, is one of the most complete yet most concise and succinct philosophy covering all aspects of human life, from birth to death, be it childhood, youth, love, marriage, etc. It's a paradox, though, that he himself never liked being called a philosopher. I took to his philosophical poetry style with similar themes like life, love, human relationships, and death. Many may not know that The Prophet has never been out of print since it was first published in 1923. It has been translated into more than 100 languages, making it among the top 10 most translated books in history and one of the best-selling books of all times. What stands out in his writings for me is the simplicity of the explanation as well as the language which can be understood by all, which is a significant departure from other contemporary modern writers of his time. Rather than complicating poetry, he simplified it to a great extent for it to be understood by all. In the Indian context, I often draw an analogy between him and Jagjit Singh, who simplified ghazals for the masses. Another important aspect is the easy flow of his poetry and his storytelling through poetry. His poetry was more prose than following a stringent poetic style. A line of poetry from his book, Sand and Foam, which reads, "Half of what I say is meaningless, but I say it so that the other half may reach you." This line succinctly captures the reason behind his writings and why he chose to write in a simple language. Interestingly, this line was used in a slightly altered form by John Lennon in one of his Beatles songs. As a retort to the criticism of his writing style, he even wrote a poem with the title "You Have Your Language and I Have Mine." Few know that he was a great painter and a visual artist too. So all in all, he was a creative genius who excelled in all art forms. And last but not the least, he had strong political views too. John F. Kennedy's iconic line, "Ask not what your country can do for you, ask what you can do for your country," was in fact taken from one of Gibran's rhetoric for the newly created Lebanon. In summary, I strongly feel that works of Kahlil Gibran are a must-read for any New Age author or writer. As a tribute to him, on his 142nd birth anniversary, I would read out a couple of lines from his book, The Prophet. "You have been told that even like a chain, you are as weak as your weakest link. This is but half the truth. You also as strong as your strongest link. To measure you by your smallest deed is to reckon the power of ocean by the frailty of its foam. To judge you by your failures is to cast blame upon the seasons for their inconstancy."
Thank you, Rahul. It was pleasure having you with us. The three authors you mentioned are undoubtedly great and my favorites also. Gulzar Saab, can you please tell us that what are the different dimensions and areas which were touched by Kahlil Gibran?
As I have said that Kahlil Gibran was not just a writer, he had multifaceted personality. And within short span of time, because he died very young, at that time he has been one of the most prominent writers, one of the most prominent artists, painter. He was a novelist, he was an essayist. He used to write
a
for
philosopher.
he was a philosopher. He used to write for the magazines, newspapers, and he basically was in touch with all the big names at that particular time when he was alive. So when you read Kahlil Gibran's work, so then you find that it is touching upon multiple aspects of human life and multiple aspects of certain things which are basically relevant as of now also. You see the book Broken Wings, where he is promoting the women's rights, and he was one of the most prominent advocates of women's rights. He has been promoting it through his art also. Then he was a humanist. He was deep into spirituality. He had a deep understanding of environment. He had understanding of peace and harmony. He had this thing that we all belong to one. We as a human race are one race. There should not be borders. There should not be nationalities. So there is one. So he is saying that if at all I was having some power to see it from the cloud, when I'll see it from the cloud, I'll see that there are no walls, there are no boundaries. Even the farm of one person is not, there is no boundary between that farm and the farm of other person. So that kind of person was Kahlil Gibran. And he was against religious orthodoxy. In his one of the books, The Spirits Rebellious, he wrote certain things about the church in Lebanon, and that led to excommunication of Kahlil Gibran from the church. But you see how the time changes. At one stage of his life he was excommunicated, but when he died, the kind of honors which he was given, every religious faith, whether it is Christianity, Judaism, Islam, or any other faith, they came together to honor this great son of Lebanon. It is not something that you will just read and understand it. It has to be read slowly, it has to be understood slowly. If you'll read it once, you'll understand some facet of it, and then you'll read it again, then you'll understand some other facet of it. And one more thing I'd like to add here, that is not something, he gave new dimensions to Arab literature. Right. That is also one of the contributions of Kahlil Gibran. So overall, I will say that Kahlil Gibran was a universalist. He was a pacifist. He was a person who loved human race as a whole. To understand Kahlil Gibran, I'll read a poem from his book Tear and Smile. Okay. So it goes like the Song of Man. He says that I was here from the moment of the beginning, and here I am still, and I shall remain here until the end of the world. For there is no ending to my grief-stricken being. I roamed the infinite sky and soared in the ideal world and floated through the firmament. But here I am, prisoner of measurement. I heard the teachings of Confucius. I listened to Brahma's wisdom. I sat by Buddha under the tree of knowledge. Yet here I am, existing with ignorance and heresy. I was on the Sinai when Jehovah approached Moses. I saw the Nazarene's miracle at the Jordan. I was in Medina when Muhammad visited. Yet here I am, prisoner of bewilderment. Then I witnessed the might of Babylon. I learned of the glory of Egypt. I viewed the warring greatness of Rome. Yet my earlier teachings showed the weakness and sorrow of those achievements. I conversed with the magicians of Endor. I debated with the priests of Assyria. I gleaned depth from the prophets of Palestine. Yet I am still seeking truth. I gathered wisdom from quite India. I probed the antiquity of Arabia. I heard all that can be heard, yet my heart is deaf and blind. I suffered at the hands of despotic rulers. I suffered slavery under insane invaders. I suffered hunger imposed by tyranny. Yet I still possess some inner power with which I struggle to greet each day. My mind is filled, but my heart is empty. My body is old, but my heart is an infant. Perhaps in youth my heart will grow, but I pray to grow old and reach the moment of my return to God. Only then will my heart fill. I was here from the moment of the beginning, and here I am still, and I shall remain here until the end of the world. For there is no ending to my grief. You can see that he was an optimist, and he believed that human has the power to reach to the great heights, even after when he has suffered so much throughout the history.
Baba, can you tell me what was Kahlil Gibran's connection with India?
It's a very interesting question. Basically, Kahlil Gibran has never visited India in his lifetime. But when you read Kahlil Gibran and then you read the philosophical books from India, mostly the Upanishads and the Vedanta philosophical books, then you realize that there is a deep connection. And when I was reading Swami Vivekananda's books, because we are doing this session on Swami Vivekananda in the coming week.
Yes.
So I was going through his books, the complete works of Swami Vivekananda, and then I realized that he was there at that time when Kahlil Gibran was living. So in 1900, 1905, during that period, Swami Vivekananda was also there. So this curious thought came to my mind whether he has met Kahlil Gibran, but I don't have any evidence to that. But when you read Swami Vivekananda and then you read Kahlil Gibran's work, there is lot of cohesion, there is a lot of connection. And with India, he was influenced and he was having deep admiration from Mahatma Gandhi for his non-violence, for his, the way he was leading the freedom struggle movement in India. And he was also having deep admiration for Rabindranath Tagore, because both of them were having this common connection of literature, art, and the concept of oneness of humankind.
Thank you, all of you, for sharing your insights about Kahlil Gibran. To our viewers, I hope you enjoyed this episode of Gibran's life and poetry. His words remind us to live with love, gratitude, and purpose. If you haven't already, I highly recommend you to read his works and letting its wisdom guide you. Until next time, stay inspired, stay connected. बहुत बहुत खुश रहिए क्योंकि जिंदगी है गुलजार. Happy reading to all of you.